Hello listeners and welcome back. Today we're going to be discussing movies that should have been good. These are all movies that were released from the year 2020 to 2023. Even though this will not be an in-depth review on each movie, a spoiler issue is being warned as I am still going into detail with some of the stories. This list will also be ranked to my least anticipated to most anticipated. Starting off, we have Sweet Girl, an action thriller released in August of 2021. Starring Jason Momoa, a man seeks justice on those who caused his wife's death, while also trying to protect the only family he has left, his daughter. I wasn't necessarily anticipating Sweet Girl, but after scrolling through Netflix and seeing Jason Momoa, I decided to give it a watch. Although it held a dramatic twist being revealed at the end that Jason's character was actually killed off at the beginning of the film and it was his daughter Rachel playing out the events all along. It is a shocking twist that is not revealed until the end and completely changes the perspective of the movie. Even though it definitely held a unique concept, the reason that it is on this list is due to the fact that it did have such a unique concept and twist. I still found the film very mediocre and mundane. I found myself getting bored and not even the shocking twist could save it. There was no one specific reason why this movie made it onto this list. It was simply just meant to be an enjoyable action film but somehow just did not hit. Next, we have The Outlaws, an action comedy released in July of 2023. After hearing this movie was going to star Nina Dobrev, Adam Devine, and Pierce Brosnan, and then watching the trailer, I didn't necessarily have the highest expectations but was expecting to thoroughly enjoy it. Owen, played by Adam Devine, a bank manager about to marry Parker, played by Nina Dobrev, is about to have his wedding weekend turned upside down when his bank is robbed and held up by ghost bandits. To make matters worse, Owen believes his future in-laws that have just arrived in town are responsible for the robbery and may even be the infamous outlaws. With this plot, however, the story still did not live up to what it could have been. I was really expecting to enjoy this movie and found myself disappointed. There were still some clever moments, but I still felt that the plot could have been done better. It was still a fun time, but was expecting it to be a lot funnier, and it left some things unanswered. For example, why did Nina's character Parker have all these tattoos symbolizing that she had a dark past, but was then revealed that she had no idea her parents were outlaws? So overall it was still okay, but definitely could have been better. Next we have Fast 9, an action adventure released in June of 2021. I, as I'm sure many of you, have grown up watching the Fast films. So when it was announced that they were making a 9th, of course I couldn't wait to see what they had in store. The anticipation only grew when the trailer was released, revealing the original family back together again, along with the shocking new plot that Dom has a brother, and the outstandingly shocking twist that Han is alive. Going into this film, I had a lot of expectations, as not only was it the next movie in the Fast franchise, but also with the build of all of our questions finally getting answered. This one just did not hit the same as the other ones previously had. It was good to see all of the old family back at it again on another adventure, but this time some of the stakes were just a little too high and a little too crazy. The twist of Dom having a brother was definitely shocking and unique, but came out of nowhere and still left us with a lot of unanswered questions. But more importantly, the shocking twist of Han still being alive. This was one of the biggest surprises to come out of the movie, especially considering we had a whole movie, Tokyo Drift, revolved around Han's death. To bring him back was a shockingly bold move. I don't think they ever should have brought him back. Personally, I believe Han should have stayed dead just because there was so much story already written around his death. Then of course there is the most disappointing thing of all to have come out of this film. Do we even need to mention it? It's the space scene. Yeah, I don't even know what to say about this. I don't think anyone does. I think that's why no one really talks about it, that and everyone just wants to pretend it simply didn't happen, which I completely understand because, yeah, I just can't even. Moving on, or not moving on actually, we have Fast X, a action crime, came out in May of 2023. After the release of Fast 9, I think people were hoping for a comeback. When it was announced we were getting Fast 10, did we get what we were hoping for? Absolutely not. The movie did do a good job of bringing all of our favourite backs from the original cast, including a special surprise cameo from Paul Walker's daughter. But other than that was all we really had looking forward to going into this movie. Gave us another action-packed adventure with over-the-top theatrics. Although Jason Momoa did a great job of playing a deranged psycho, I do think he went a little over-the-top and crazy with his performance at some parts. Other moments that were disappointing were the kill-off of Jacob's character, one being as his death was super slack, but also what's the point of writing in this whole story and twist about Dom having this long-lost brother only to be introduced in the last film just to now be killed off. Particularly when the characters were just starting to get along. One character I didn't care about at all during the film was Isabella. Turns out to be Alina's sister, the co-op and love interest to Dom from the 5th film, as well as the mother to his child. It is revealed out of the blue during this film that she had a sister, Isabella. I did not care about this character at all. She had no purpose or value. We literally had 2 full scenes solely on her being rescued. And I was literally like, why? Who cares? Let's just move on. Her character could have been killed off and I wouldn't have even cared. Held no significant value to the story. It was just a waste of time. Overall, I don't really know what's become of the writer's room during the making of these last few films, but at this point I am very nervous to see what's in store for us in these next upcoming films. Next up we have Barbie, a comedy fantasy released in July of 2023. I am a full-on ride or die when it comes to Barbie. I was given the 12 Dancing Princesses as a kid, and that was it for me. I have now since watched the additional 27 films that go along with that one. So I know my shit when it comes to Barbie. And obviously being a ride or die of hers from such a young age, I was more than excited and anticipated when I heard that there was going to be a live action. Things were only made more exciting when it was revealed that Margot Robbie was casted as Barbie and Ryan Gosling was playing Ken, as they were the perfect duo for the role. The anticipation for this movie really proved to the world how much everyone loves Barbie, with theaters sold out all over the world with people packed in to see it. So why was it after its release no one knew quite what to say about it? Perhaps because there's just a lot to unpack. First of all, it was nothing of what anyone had expected it to be. Quite sure what I was expecting, but the story I got certainly wasn't it. It ended up exploring a lot of deeper topics and having a lot more depth than anyone quite expected. It ended up being quite political and controversial at times, stirring up a lot of different debates and conversations, not only within the movie but also throughout general society. But the biggest letdown for me, what I would say, would have to be the representation they gave Barbie. The Barbie they represented and showed in the movie was nothing like what we had grown up with and come to know and love. The Barbie represented in this movie was quite down and cynical at times. They claimed that Barbie has always been represented as perfect and unrelatable, when that is simply just not the case. In all of the movies I grew up on Barbie, she was always overcoming some sort of obstacle. There were times when she did get upset and felt like giving up. There was never once when she admitted to doing anything by herself. She always had the help of family and friends around her. The representation of Barbie and Ken's relationship was also completely wrong. Barbie always came off quite rude and dismissive whenever approached with Ken. She found him a nuisance and annoying and was always trying to find ways to get rid of him. She always seemed to be that little bit more happy when he was not around, which again was a huge misrepresentation from the Ken and Barbie we all know and love. Growing up, Barbie was never once dismissive or rude to Ken. She always loved him and valued his presence. As a matter of fact, a lot of the stories with them featured together were highly based around them trying to find their way back to each other and be with one another. So why did they try and dismiss and undermine their relationship in this live action? Even though this movie holds a lot of good key messages and values, it is not a good or accurate representation of Barbie as a character. Coming up next on this list, we have Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, an action-adventure released in May of 2023. I loved the first 2 films and was super excited for the 3rd installment. I had super high expectations going into this movie and was really looking forward to it. So why was I so disappointed? Don't get me wrong, I still really enjoyed the movie and loved learning about Rocket's story. There was only one issue I had with Rocket's story, and it was more of a side note than an actual issue that I'll have to get into in a more in-depth video. It'll take too long to explain and we still have a lot to get through. Starting off with probably the most biggest disappointment of the movie would have to be Peter and Gamora's story. The writers completely did us dirty with this entire storyline. We are thrust into volume 3 with Gamora not being a part of the Guardians anymore, but also with the crazingly shocking twist that she has completely lost her memory, where she has forgotten not only Peter, her sister, but the rest of the Guardians as well, the whole life that she shared with them, therefore ultimately erasing Peter and Gamora's love story. Like, what the hell? I don't know about you, but I was super mad when I found out about this storyline. It also didn't make much sense that they'd write in the fact that Gamora would lose her memory at the exact moment her sister has decided to switch sides and join her as a Guardian. I was really hoping to see some sister bonding and development during this movie. I thought it was going to be about the two sisters trying to bond and work together. I figured they would have so much material to use with that. You could have them banter between one another and make things really fun and funny, with their dry sarcastic humor and subtle digs towards one another. Instead, we got none of that, and their relationship and development was erased along with Gamora's memory. And lastly, the overall ending for the Guardians was just disappointing. I thought it was quite mediocre and slack that Peter would just retire back on Earth. Even though Gamora found a new family and was happy, it never quite sat right, her not being with the Guardians. Drax retiring to take care of the kids was sweet, but I felt like he had more value when he was part of the Guardians. It also did not make sense for Gamora's sisters to settle down in an average society. And even though Groot and Rocket got to continue on being Guardians and helping the galaxy, I would have much rather have seen an ending with all of them flying off into the stars together, symbolizing they were this forever team, ready to put their lives on the line to save the galaxy. I was thoroughly disappointed with this movie as I had high expectations for it and really wanted to enjoy it. It wasn't a complete flop for me, as I did still find it quite enjoyable, like with Rocket's story and funny moments, plus just having fun on the overall adventure. But it nowhere near lived up to the hype of the first two films. Definitely did not agree with the direction of the characters' stories and did not feel satisfied or content when ending. As a matter of fact, was left feeling quite empty and disappointed. Finally, we have John Wick Chapter 4, an action thriller that was released in March of 2023. Since following him in 2014, all the way up to the last installment of Chapter 4, I was just as excited as anyone to see John Wick back on the big screen, wondering what wild action he had in store for us this time. After loving the first 3 films, I was more than anticipating the final chapter and how it would all finally conclude. Unfortunately, however, I was not left satisfied. Although the movie was still enjoyable and Keanu Reeves delivered with another amazing non-stop action-packed thriller, definitely flopped compared to the first 3 films. If anything, the action was a little overdone. For example, it felt like he was fighting too many people at one time, even for someone like John Wick. Not to mention, he wasn't just fighting, but also getting shot at and thrown around. It just seemed a little dramatic even for someone as invincible as John Wick. Other parts that were slightly dramatic include towards the end of the film, the staircase scene, where John must battle his way up flights of stairs while taking on multiple assassins. If you have watched the scene, you would know that he makes it to the top only to get kicked and roll all the way back down to the bottom only to start all over again. I felt like this was a little too dramatic, one because we had just seen him already battle up the stairs, plus this scene took place at the end of the film, meaning we just watched 2 hours of him getting beat up and shot at already. One of the more ridiculous things to have come out of this film would have had to have been the blind man. Although it was an interesting and unique concept, it was cool at times as you were watching a unique skill and form of fighting. However, it just was not realistic when holding a torch to someone like John Wick. It didn't make sense for John Wick's match to be a blind man, not after watching him take on countless other assassins and then watching him pop them off as if it's nothing. yet somehow his kryptonite is a blind man, but an old blind man. Just simply didn't make sense and was a bit ridiculous. But finally, the most disappointing thing that occurred would have had to have been the ending. Even, how can he just die? After all of that, he just dies. It was absolutely mind-boggling to me and kind of still is. Not only is it unsatisfying, as viewers just watched him endure endless weeks of fighting and loss to have finally found a way out and actually succeeded getting out, only to die, completely disvalues the whole meaning and purpose of the movie, especially when you take into account looking back into the third film when John visited the desert. Whilst there, he was asked, "Why do you keep fighting? Why do you have the will to fight and not just die?" John answers that he fights to keep the memory of him and his wife alive. If that is so, why did you kill him off? It completely undermines and disvalues the whole purpose of the story. If he was going to just die in the end, what is the point of all of these films? Could have just rolled over and died in the first one, but he decided to fight and keep the memory of them alive. So why is it that you killed him off? And definitely left me disappointed and unsatisfied, which I am super sad to say because I loved the first 3 films and had really high hopes for the final installment. That is all I have for you this video. Let me know if you want more videos like this. Did you agree or disagree with my picks? What were some of your opinions on the films? Do you agree with some of my opinions, or did you love all of these films? What are some movies I should include for next time? Also, let me know if you want a more in-depth review on any of the movies I have mentioned, as there is still plenty more to talk about. That is all for this episode. As always, everything we discussed will be linked below along with my socials. Please be sure to like, subscribe and follow. Feel free to leave all your thoughts and comments below. Thanks for listening.